Welcome back, everybody. TI has just concluded, and this video is going to be a meta update on 3 heroes that we saw a lot of at TI that I think is a great time to learn now, and I'm going to be breaking them down for you in a nice, simple, digestible manner. For each of the 3 heroes, I'm going to be giving you the role that they're played in, the facet that they're using, skill build that people are going for, the common item builds, and the counters that you might want to be worried about considering putting on your ban list or just keeping an eye out when you're going into the draft phase. After I've broken down each individual hero, later on in the video, I'll be giving you a little bit more nuance and some tips and tricks that you can use for each one in case you're looking to really master and dive deep. But let's first break down the fundamentals. Number 1, a hero we almost always see at TI, and that is Earthshaker. Earthshaker was played in the mid lane as well as the off lane. Facet that everyone was taking was the tectonic buildup, which makes the radius of your aftershock larger as you level up your echo slam. Skill build that people were going for was level 1 enchant totem, level 2 aftershock, oftentimes level 3 fissure for sniping range creeps, and proceeding to max out aftershock afterwards. They were of course leveling echo slam every time that they could. After they had maxed out aftershock, they proceeded to max out fissure next, which is a little bit different than we've been seeing historically. They then took the left talent at 10, which maxes out the fissure damage. Then after maxing aftershock, the level 15 talent, they also take the left talent for aftershock damage. At level 20, they're taking the right talent, and at level 25, much more situational which one they were taking. The Echo Slam one is much more around the teamfight wombo combo, while the Enchant Totem cooldown was much more about poking people with Shard and spamming the Enchant Totem alongside your fissure. The item build that people were going for in the mid lane was the basic branches for starting items into bottle, boots, wand, occasionally treads or phase. That's something you're going to have to feel out yourself. Treads give you a nice animation on your Enchant Totem. Phase give you the ability to set yourself up better for the slugger. And after that, whether or not they upgraded their boots, they would almost always go blink into Kaya, into Shard. And afterwards, it was a bit situational whether or not they could go greedier and more farm heavy and more bursty, or they had to go more defensive with something like a BKB. But the options were BKB, upgrading the Kaya Yasha for cast animation on your fissure as well as your Enchant Totem, and then late game it was almost always the Octarine into Refresher. Offlane Earthshaker ends up building the same later on, but they obviously don't build a bottle since they're not in the mid lane. So the starting item build was double circlet, gauntlet, and 3 branches, and then they ferry themselves Tango, Bracer, they buy a Null Talisman for mana regen, a wand, brown boots, and occasionally Soul Ring, proceeding to go into the normal build that we saw for mid, which is Blink, Kaya, Shard. The counters for Earthshaker, in the mid lane especially, are ranged punishers with damage over time or just strong harass like Queen of Pain, Huskar, Leshrac, all of which also have a way to kind of survive through the burst damage with Queen of Pain's innate, Huskar's magic resistance, and Leshrac building into really tanky items, heroes that Earthshaker doesn't really want to initiate onto. And in the off lane, it's ranged carries that just push the lane and eventually become tanky. Things like Medusa being one of the worst ones, and something like Troll Warlord in lane that becomes hard to kill with his level 25 later on in the game, and other carries that are hard to initiate onto that also represent some sort of counter initiation and burst, like Monkey King and Ursa. Moving on to the second hero that I recommend after seeing TI would be Hoodwink. Hoodwink is mainly played as a 4, but can also be played as a 5, and everyone is going for the Go Nuts facet, which gives you cast range and attack range when you use your Scurry. The skill build is at level 1 to use Acorn Shot if you need a way for you to secure range creeps because your core cannot. Otherwise, your Bushwhack is much better for harass, and people were tending to go for that. At level 2, you take the one that you didn't take at level 1. Then you take Bushwhack into Scurry at level 4. Then you go maxed out Bushwhack, maxed out Scurry next. Then people are taking the Scurry talent at level 10. Then they're finally maxing out Acorn Shot and also taking the Bushwhack talent at level 15. And towards the late game, we're no longer seeing like the Maelstrom Deso Hoodwinks. It's all about the spellcasting support Hoodwink. You're seeing the right talent at level 20, the left talent at level 25. The item build that I most commonly saw was basic starting items like Stick, Fairy Fire, Blood Grenade, into Arcane Boots, utility items like Glimmer Cape, Force Staff, or Yules, whichever one keeps you alive best in the early game, or if your teammates do not have setup stuns for you, which is definitely necessary for Hoodwink to land her spells in the mid game, people will often go for Atos as their first item. Atos is an item where you don't feel comfortable with any of your teammates being able to initiate for you, so you have to buy it. If I already have initiation, I'm definitely prioritize keeping myself alive, because Hoodwink is an amazing counter initiator as well as a backline damage dealer. In the mid to late game, the burst for Hoodwink can come from going for an early Sheepstick if your team is lacking the disable or you're against elusive heroes like Storm Spirit and Puck, or going for the Ether Lens into E-Blade with that early Shard. The Shard is absolutely essential that people try to get it as close to 15 minutes as possible because it itself does damage. It buffs up all spell damage by 25%. Hoodwink does a ton of damage. And it also buffs up, like I said, your teammates' spell damage. So it's even better when your teammates have a lot of spell damage as well. The counters to Hoodwink are heroes that can backline jump through trees. That is the most notable thing, because Hoodwink's Scurry makes her incredibly difficult to catch if the opponent has no way to find you in trees. The most notable ones in my experience are Storm Spirit, Mars, Batrider, Spirit Breaker, something like a Spectre if they get a glimpse of you. But if the opponent lacks gap close, you are one of the hardest heroes in the game to kill, bar none. Last but not least, the 3 heroes at TI, covering the one role we have not talked about so far, which is the carry. And that is going to be Medusa. Medusa is only played in the 1 position now, no longer seeing any 3 position Medusa or flexing it to support, and they are going for the Venomous Volley facet. The skill build for Medusa is Mystic Stake into Gorgon's Grasp, back into Mystic Stake, and then you proceed to alternate between Split Shot and Mystic Stake. Most Medusas are not taking their ultimate until they absolutely have to. There will be situations where you take it between levels 6 and 9, but most of the time people are delaying it until level 10 where they've maxed out their Split Shot, as well as their Mystic Stake for farming and mana sustain purposes. With 1 point in ulti and 1 point in Gorgon's Grasp, Medusas are leaving the rest of their points into stats. This helps them farm, be a bit tankier because Medusa doesn't have any strength gain or great stat gain, and it also keeps her alive much better and gives her damage. They even skip the level 10 talent. They end up taking the right 15 talent, the left 20 talent, and the left 25 talent, only maxing out the Stone Gaze once they're out of points for stats, only maxing out the Gorgon's Grasp afterwards. And then in the hyper late game, they'll take the extra 10% Stone Gaze talent from level 10. The item build for Medusa is to start off with a Sage's Mask, a stick, branches, and a single mango to start. They usually build into Wand, Null Talisman for sustain, because Null Talisman mana regen is effectively HP regen, really cheap cost, into Treads Manta. Now, after you go Treads Manta, which is absolutely essential, everyone does it. It's just too good. The illusions farm for you, gives you survivability, move speed on a really slow hero. You have 2 options afterwards. The standard build is to go straight Butterfly, which is the only item that synergizes with her Mana Shield, because her Mana Shield does not include armor or magic resistance. So the only item that gives her EHP is Butterfly, into Scotty, and then afterwards considering items like Daedalus, MKB for damage, you want to make sure you're not ignorable, and positioning items like Swift Link or Silver Edge, depending on if there's a passive you need to break, but you need to be able to throw yourself in there once you're unkillable. And a late game Ags is almost always necessary because it allows for your proc items like Scotty, Daedalus, MKB to work on all of your attacks. However, the other build that we've also been seeing that does not include the Butterfly Scotty, following the Treads Manta, is when the enemy has strong illusion creators, such as Terrorblade, Darkseer, Shadow Demon, Grimstroke. When you build Butterfly straight into Scotty with Manta, this is a bunch of stats. If you go Daedalus afterwards, your illusions are going to hit like a truck. So what they often do, instead of going for these items, is to go Manta into Maelstrom Ags, which gives you decent damage in an AoE, but most notably makes your illusions god-awfully useless. Usually going for something like a Scotty, Kaiasange, Mjolnir later on as a way to become very tanky, because Scotty gives you a bunch of stats, Kaiasange gives you mana loss reduction, which does work with her mana shield, and then you're relying on the Ags plus the Mjolnir for late game damage. The counters for Medusa, the obvious one being Anti-Mage. I do believe her worst matchup in the offlane is actually Axe, because he can harass her a lot for free, end up cutting waves, and even though he can't burst her later on, he becomes free farming and ends up killing her team while she is not able to contribute to the game. The mid laners that cause her the most issue are ones that are able to rush an early defusal and hunt her down on a low cooldown, most notably Monkey King and Pangolier. A lot of people consider carries that can go for defusal, but in my experience, if you go for a defusal early on carries, that is not an option, because by the time you have it, usually Medusa's already has or is close to having her Manta, which means she can dispel it and run away from you. And then she ends up out farming you and outscaling you with the butterfly because she evades your attacks, farms faster than you, and you fall really far behind. So it is not an option, in my experience, for the carry to go Diffusal. You can consider supports like Wind Ranger that also go Diffusal, but it mainly comes from the mid laners that I mentioned. So I've broken down the fundamentals for each of these three heroes, and if you want to just stop there, go into a game, try it out for yourselves, go on ahead. But for the rest of this video, I'm going to be breaking down just some nuanced things to be considering, little drills that you could perhaps do to practice these heroes, and also keeping in mind the mechanics of some of how this stuff works. Going into Earthshaker first, I'm going to be talking about two things that I believe are absolutely essential to understand in terms of min-maxing Earthshaker. And you can kind of see what I'm going for on the first one. The first one is the fact that teams are virtually always playing for stacks in the triangle. And this is absolutely essential because a lot of viewers on Twitch, I have noticed, is they expect people to be using Echo Slam to kill heroes. But the fact is, almost all the high-level Earthshakers are using their first Echo Slam in an ideal scenario on ancient creeps as well as a big camp stacked. It is a huge injection of golden XP and often gets you very close to your blink at an early time. So telling your team to stack for you and looking as early as you can to clear them is an essential part of playing Earthshaker offlane or Earthshaker mid. I am going to quickly demonstrate just how fast you farm this and how to do it with Earthshaker. As you can see, Earthshaker almost instantly kills a 4-stack of Ancients as well as the big camp. If there's less creeps, it'll actually take you longer. I got 2 full levels from killing those, which is absolutely insane early on into the game, and will propel me almost completely to my Blink Dagger, which will then line up with using my next Echo Slam. For the second tips and tricks for Earthshaker, I would like to highlight something we all know about Earthshaker, and that is his wombo combo teamfight ability. But something that Earthshaker has always lacked is a reliable way to farm. This reminds me of a time when people were picking Manta Zeus. And what I thought made Manta Zeus so strong is that you have a hero that offers a lot of teamfight damage. In the case of Earthshaker, it's damage as well as stuns. That previous weakness was that he always had to show on lanes in order to farm. So he's like this backline teamfighter that you always want to target first, that would have to expose himself on the map in order to farm. So that's why Manta Zeus with Shard used to be so broken, because you could never jump Zeus because you never saw him. And now that applies to Earthshaker when you take the 2 left talents, Kaya, and the Shard plus Fissure. So you need Shard, Kaya, and the 2 left talents, oftentimes around 20 minutes into the game. And you'll see here that what it allows is for you to clear an entire creep wave without ever showing yourself from the range of Fissure, which is 1600 range away. As you can see, other than the banner creep, the full creep wave will die to your combo. I'll show you guys one more time. This allows for Earthshaker to not only get the items that he needs to scale into the late game, but to ensure that he does not die while he is doing it. So playing off map as Shaker is absolutely essential. Minimize the amount of time, if any, that you are ever envisioned once you get these items up. Next up, we have Hoodwink. For the first basic tip and trick is to know that you can alt cast your Acorn Shot. I have it where I just push Alt plus Q and that changes it to alt cast. When Acorn Shot is not alt casted and you click near an enemy unit, it will target them and bounce off them like so. Now notice that you can use Acorn Shot to plant a tree. But if I try to do that near an opponent to set up my bushwhack, I can't do that very easily. But that's what the alt casting is for. The alt cast makes it automatically plant a tree no matter where I target. And it'll first bounce to the tree, then it'll bounce as normal. So learning to get used to toggling this based on the situation, because it does remove one of the bounces of Acorn Shot, so it's not good to do it all the time, especially when you're farming creep waves, is an essential part of min-maxing Hoodwink. So the standard combo for Hoodwink when the opponent is away from trees is to Acorn Shot the ground and follow it up with a bushwhack as soon as possible. Good players will be ready to Quelling Blade the tree before the bushwhack lands, but there is a little bit of nuance to it. So the nuance is that with normal cast range, meaning without Scurry activated without an ether lens, you have to plant the tree first, giving the opponent a chance to cut it down. However, with ether lens plus scurry, perhaps considering a neutral item, you can actually toss the bushwhack first because the acorn shot has a faster travel time. Like so. So practicing this timing can be very useful. So in the late game, Hoodwink has quite a lot of buttons to press in order to execute her combo properly. She has 5 activatable spells, often more than one activatable item, such as Glimmer Cape to get herself in there, E-Blade or Sheepstick to target the opponent with. So I think it is very essential to practice this combo if you want to min-max Hoodwink. So I personally like to have the enemy walking back and forth to make it more difficult to hit them. So I shift Q them up. And then I act like I'm walking from out of trees. So the combo is that I push Scurry into Glimmer Cape, into Acorn Shot, Bushwhack, ulti plus Boomerang, E-Blade as I'm ulting. Okay, let's try it out. Perfect. One more time, just for cleanliness sake. Noting that you're able to cast Boomerang and any of your other spells while you're ulting. It's good to get practice in with E-Blade and without E-Blade because of the extra cast range that it provides. You can also try it with a Hex first. You get the idea. I believe that practicing these combos on a hero like Hoodwink is absolutely essential because you'll learn more in the 10 minutes you spend doing this than playing 25 plus games on Hoodwink, because the late game combos are just really hard to pull off in the moment without drilling them out. Last but not least, for Medusa, I have one tip that I think is essential to min-maxing her farm in the early game because mana can become a problem. And that is to learn which neutrals have mana such that she's able to use Mystic Snake in order to regain mana. So a good example of this is golems plus their splits having mana. This is a perfect camp to be able to gain mana from. But what you have to do is make it so that the golems, the large ones, die to your snake, where it can then bounce to the small ones where they spawn, as I'll show you. As you can see, I gained about 300 mana from casting Mystic Snake in the correct timing. I can even maximize this by starting with treads on int and then switching them back to agility when the snake comes back. So as you see, I have about 600. All of the water creeps have mana. And I gained about 25 mana from that. So even these camps give you a little bit of mana. In terms of the hard camp, the only camp that gives you mana by default is actually the satyrs, because they all have mana and they also have pretty large mana pools. As you see, I gained back to full mana by Mystic Snaking it. It's also worth considering buying Quelling Blade on Medusa such that you can drag camps into each other, like this. Better to get vision of both camps by cutting down the trees that are blocking you. Making sure that you min-max the split shot usage of Medusa. Almost always try to drag 2 camps into each other in order to attack them both at the same time, like this. The early game before you get Manta on Medusa is her most vulnerable period. The early game period where Medusa has to jungle before she gets her Manta is the one period of the game that she's really fragile. What I believe makes her really good in the current meta is because the game seems to automatically stagnate around the 10 to 15 minute mark. All heroes seem to have some time in order to farm, and Medusa is able to reliably get to her timings. So, making sure that your split shot is hitting 5 creeps as often as possible by dragging 2 camps into each other, and also learning which creeps have mana so that you can utilize them to gain mana, effectively giving yourself health back, is essential to getting through this portion of the game on Medusa. Once you get to Manta, it's usually smooth sailing from there, as you can use your Manta to be summoned to push creep waves without putting your hero in danger and accelerating your farm even further. So that concludes our TI meta update with 3 new heroes for you guys to try, effectively covering all 5 roles. Earthshaker in the mid and off lane, Hoodwink in the 2 support positions, predominantly 4, but can still be played 5, as well as Medusa in the carry role. Let me know in the comments what you guys thought of the structure of this video, and also let me know how it goes for you when you're trying out these new heroes. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I'll see you in the next update.